Welcome everyone. I'm so grateful to all of you for coming to join us tonight on this very cold New York evening to talk about, well, what was billed as everything other than art, but which might end up including a little bit of art in the end, to celebrate this exhibition that we're sitting in right now, which is Friedrich Kunath's first show with Pace Gallery, Aimless Love, and which coincides with the publication of this marvelous book, The Grand Tour, a monograph on Freddie, as those of us who know him refer to him, which covers the last 30 years of his work. So it's really comprehensive and fantastic and includes contributions by Dean Bejar, Jennifer Higgy, Robert Fowler, and somebody named Naomi Fry. So the Monacelli Press has put out this book, and we're so excited to have it in the world and to have it coincide with this show. And we have copies here tonight if you'd like to pick one up, which I highly encourage you to do. But I am just really excited to have Naomi here tonight with us, and so grateful to you, Naomi, for joining us.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
And grateful to be here as well.
Well, Naomi, for those of you who don't know, is a cultural critic, if I can call you that.
I think so. I think that's fair.
I think you're also a journalist to some extent. I guess so.
I always, when people say you're a journalist, I'm like, I feel like I'm like lying. I'm like, I'm a writer. Like journalist sounds so like I should be, you know, kind of like revealing political.
Yeah, uncovering dirt.
Yeah, uncovering dirt, which
you do deal with dirt.
I deal with dirt. I do
it.
deal with dirt, but I uncover it on the cultural level, not so much.
When it comes to art and film and television and books and that sort of thing, which you do and have done since 2018 as a staff writer for The New Yorker.
Yes.
Which, you know, many of us love to read your pieces when they come out, and also to listen to Critics at Large, which is the podcast that you host for The New Yorker, where you talk about contemporary media, what's happening in our culture, and hence why you're out and about and looking at art.
Exactly.
And writing about the work of interesting contemporary artists like Mr. Kunath.
Yes.
So I guess I would say lots of other things about you, but we're not going to sit here all night and talk about that.
Cut to like 7 hours later.
Cut to 7 hours later. I'm going to say a little bit about Freddie Kunath, the artist, because I imagine many of you are not familiar with Freddie's work. Freddie is a part-time tennis coach and a car enthusiast. He's a consummate collector of vintage men's fragrances. And he's also an artist who lives and works in Los Angeles. He was born in Karl-Marx-Stadt, as it was then known, in 1975, but became Chemnitz, which, by the way, is the International European City of Culture for 2025, Chemnitz.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Book your tickets now, because 2025, it's rapidly going. He may either at this moment be in Berlin or Egypt.
Yes, he's a bit of a cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Well, he's always traveling. And in fact, this whole show is about travel in a lot of ways. And the romanticism of travel and the longing of it and the place it holds in our psyche and in our lives. But he's also somebody who, you know, when I was talking about doing this program with you and I was trying to entice him to do it, he said, well, I really can't talk about my work. Which, as we know, isn't true. Actually, Freddie could talk about his work incredibly well.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? The sort of his refusal to. I wonder if it had to do with like, I don't want to be on stage and talk about the work, or.
I think it has to do with something very core to what the work is.
Okay.
And I want to kind of get to that, but it's sort of this question and why I ended up calling the talk Against Interpretation, which sounds very serious.
Right.
It comes from a serious intellect in Susan Sontag.
Yeah.
But you know, Susan in 1964 wrote this essay dedicating it to Paul Thek, in fact, who was an artist for whom form always followed feeling. And Freddie's the same way. These works are all about a kind of candor and about a kind of wearing your heart on your sleeve, position and posture that in a certain sense makes it impossible for him to sit in front of a live audience and talk about his own paintings. So I said, well, we'll talk about everything other than art.
Yeah.
But still, that wasn't enough. So
Right.
here
So
you
here we
are.
are.
Here you are to
Here
stand
I
in
am.
Freddie's stead and to talk about
Sorry.
your experience of the work
Right.
and the other things it leads out to and touches upon in our culture. But I
Yeah.
want to say just a couple things about Freddie for those who haven't met them. He's born in Chemnitz. He's raised in East Berlin. His mother is a band manager and part of this very bohemian East German scene. If you've ever seen the movie The Lives of Others, sort of the people who are being spied on, that's Freddie's family.
Yeah.
And when he's 9, he comes over with his mother, just his mom, to West Germany. They cross the wall, and he brings all his worldly possessions in a tiny little suitcase in one hand, and in the other hand he has a tennis racket. So his sort of earliest moment of coming into who he is as a person is a moment of migration.
Yeah.
Like 100 feet across the wall, yet into a totally different world. He's 15 in Berlin when the wall comes down. So just situating that in your mind. And he kind of comes into his own as an artist in Cologne about 25, 30 years ago. So all this time he's dreaming of LA. You know, you can imagine being in East Berlin as an 8-year-old dreaming of Los Angeles when there's nothing on the shelves in the grocery store. And finally, he ends up in LA 20 years ago, and he's been in LA now for 20 years. This show marks a kind of transitional moment. The last year since the fires that devastated LA, and Freddie has lived in Altadena for quite a long time, and the fires came very close to his house, almost burned it down, didn't, but made the neighborhood kind of uninhabitable. Since around that time, a lot of changes have happened in his life. He's been kind of 1 foot back in Europe.
Yeah.
Which is why he's in Berlin and traveling around in Germany at the moment. And this show is in a sense kind of like a chronicle. It is a self-portrait of these different moments or stages in the last year. The paintings have been in process, some of them since 2022, but they were all finished in the last year, and he thinks of them very much like soundtracks. And that's not for nothing, because Freddie was involved in music from the very beginning of his life and almost thought he would be a musician before he'd be an artist. And his work often references music. There's a painting that specifically is called Morrissey Lyrics in this show. But he said that as an artist, what defines him are, in fact, 2 poles, one of them Oasis and the other Bach. So somewhere between Oasis and Bach is the sensibility of this work.
Yeah.
But the other side of
other
it,
stuff in
and all the
between.
other side of it is
Yeah.
the visual,
Yeah.
is the German expressionism, German romanticism, American landscape painting,
Yeah.
and then Disney.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say to you, Naomi, you haven't known Freddie for all that long.
No.
You write a little bit about how you first encountered him
Yeah.
for this book, and
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that encounter and how you came to be involved.
Sure. So yes, as Oliver said, I in my essay for this book of Freddie's work, I write a little bit about how I came to meet him and be involved in this. I had heard of Freddie for years. We have several mutual friends. I knew his work a little bit. I was intrigued by it. It seemed from a distance to be quite glamorous, and he seemed quite glamorous because, you know, it's like the sort of thing that Oliver was like, oh, he's a part-time tennis coach. He's a car enthusiast, you know? And I was like, oh, okay, well that sounds kind of Hollywood. You know, that sounds kind
A
of...
part-time tennis coach for Riley Opelka.
For Riley Opelka, yes. And so I was a little intimidated when I heard about him, even though the friends we have in common are nice people and not like, you know, like fake people. Like, you know, people who I consider like to have a good, kind heart and like smart and so on. But I was always a little suspicious. Not suspicious, but a little intimidated, which often translates into suspicion and feelings of like preemptive rejection and, you know, stuff like that. But the first time I actually met him in person, it was last year. I think it was February. So, I mean, yeah, not long ago. So this was like maybe 10 months ago. And I was in Los Angeles to do a talk with a friend of mine. This was around Freeze Week. And so there were a lot of kind of art events in the city, and I know LA quite well, but there's a lot of people I don't know and a lot of events that I was sort of joining as a plus one. I didn't feel completely at ease. And there was like this one evening where I did a talk with my friend, and then we went to 2 other parties, and one of them was very glamorous, and it was this like house in the hills that was like this incredibly like over the top wealthy couple. It was some sort of fundraiser, and I was like, of
If
course.
you were making a caricature
Yes,
of a fundraiser at the house in the hills.
It was a total caricature. Like we were like ferried up in like golf carts, because like the way from the road to the, mansion on the hill was like too long to walk or something.
Not in heels anyway.
Yeah, or not in heels for those wearing heels. I was not wearing heels, and this was like right after this was like a couple months after the fires. And so LA was like in some ways still recovering from kind of the shock of the fires, and just absolutely terrible. But then like LA was back, like, this party we were at was like, there was this shimmering infinity pool, and then there was like this, big neon sculpture that said LA Strong on it to sort of like signify like we're rebuilding. But it was like, these were like literal billionaires. Anyway, it was kind of fascinating to see. And so at the end of the evening, we went to this party, and I was like, okay, this is too much. Like, this night has been like too long. It's been too many like whatever fancy people. And I was like, it's time to leave. And then out of like the scrum of the revelers, this man emerged, and he was like looking really confused. He looked really confused. He was like, he looked like his appearance was pretty flashy. Like, if you know Freddie, he wears a lot of jewelry, and he was like dressed sharp. He was like wearing like these Belgian loafers and like these, he was like dressed fancy, but I didn't know him. He looked a little familiar, and he came up to me and he was like, "Are you Naomi?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "I need help." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, he was literally saying something like, "Everything is fucked up, like I'm undergoing a crisis, I need help, I'm Freddie." And I said, "Oh, you're Freddie. Oh, it's so nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. We're friends with this and that person, whatever." And it was so interesting. It was kind of like a button on the night where everything seemed so like, oh, this is just like the good life, I mean, there's that simmering thing of course, the trauma of the fires underneath, and et cetera, and which was very real, and I came to learn also very real for Freddie himself. But it was like revelers, life was good. And then he came out, and he looked like one of the revelers. He looked to be doing fine, but then he came out with this like totally sincere, weird, like awkward, like, something is wrong with me, and we didn't know each other. So that was like a very vulnerable.
He approached you in a place of
vulnerability. He approached me from a place of vulnerability, and
in this kind of surreal context.
In the surreal context, he just like the crowd parted, and he came out and he was like, I'm having this big problem. And it was
which
like,
kind of tells you everything about
yeah,
Freddie.
which is like and now as I've grown to know him, I'm like, okay, that's actually quite a Freddie thing to do. He kind of, as you said about the work, it kind of like the works wear their hearts on their sleeves, so to speak. And so then he was like, well, there's this book. He was like, everything is fucked up. I'm like, my house was whatever, my family's whatever, like I'm sleeping in the studio. I have this book that's coming out. I need you to write this piece. Like, I really need you to write this piece for the book. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, clearly I can't say no. Like, if you put it like this. And so we became friends. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna write this thing. And then since then I've hung out with him several times. This was a very emblematic introduction both to Freddie and to his painting.
And you write in that piece, at its core, Kunath's work is about this sense of layered unease, of a psyche and an environment at cross purposes with their own impulses.
Yeah.
That layered unease.
Yeah, I guess I said that.
But that's that really is in the paintings, and it's really in the person.
I sincerely, yes, I think that's true to the extent I can say anything I wrote is true. But yes, I think that is the case.
Well, it made me realize something, which was that even though a lot of these paintings were begun before the fires, I have this sense that like the smoke of the fire has migrated into the paintings.
You said that, and I think that's interesting and I think true. And I think the smoke is like, there's obviously the smoke of the fires, but I think Los Angeles and in general, like the idea of weather, weather kind of like obstructing or like coloring our reality, because it's so true, right? It's like if a day is sunny or a day is smoggy or a day is cloudy or it's raining or it's snowing or whatever it is, it completely colors our mood. And I think the paintings are like that, chiefly maybe with this fire trauma, but also just in general, the environment of mainly Los Angeles, I think.
Well, LA which
is forever sunny except when it's not.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why so many like Armageddon and or End of Days films are set in Los Angeles.
Yeah, because I think too, when you think about the development of America, the United States, and the sort of push towards the West, and the push of the frontier until it had nowhere to go, because the only way it can go is into the water, right? It's like the end of the world. You're going as far left as you can go, and then it ends. And so really, I mean, this is kind of a cliche idea. It's not like a thing I came up with, but it's like the idea of the new world pushed to its absolute limits.
I mean, there's a painting over there where you see a car parked at the edge of a beach and there's the ocean, and then in the sky are superimposed the words saying the end. Because it is literally the end of America.
Yeah.
But it's also like the end of the, LA is the end of desire. It's the end of longing on some way.
And it really, I feel that so strongly in my own imagining of Los Angeles. And this is something I talked to Freddie about as well, because we are both not only not from Los Angeles, but also not from America. I'm originally from Israel. Freddie is, as you said, the move from the east to the west even happened to him in Germany, in Berlin. But the idea of coming from like the wrong side, not of the tracks, but just the wrong side of the world, and at least as it's been imagined in like the 20th century, and moving progressively more and more west, and
he talks about that, wanting to escape that,
and he talks about that, and the idea that something else is waiting for you over there, but once you're there, what then?
What then?
I
That's
think
when he became obsessed with Italy.
Right, there's always another place, but the idea, I think it's a place, and the fires really bore this out. The idea of like destruction is so inherently tied up in the idea of this kind of like newness and endness of this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the fact that LA is a kind of urban sprawl set on the edge of the sublime, of the natural sublime. So this landscape that comes in again and again in these paintings, is literalized in the Sierras and in the desert, but then it's the threat of that landscape too, because that's where the fires originate.
Yeah, I think, when we think about, like, I feel like a lot of these images, they are just as much as a kind of like the European romantic, the imagining of the sublime, but also just like film stills,
Absolutely.
Just like the idea of a vista that's being captured and sort of cut and arranged according to the kind of like the view of a camera
Yeah.
lens.
The thing about me, Freddie said in a quote, is that every piece of art I make comes from something other than me. An image, a toy, a song. To make a painting just out of my own personal headspace is uninteresting. Which is to say that all these images are appropriated, usually from the internet. Before the internet, it was books and magazines and album covers and film stills. They all come from somewhere else, but they're also deeply personal. So
Yeah.
it's like the need to narrate your own story, but only through images you don't create.
Yeah, and you see it, and Freddie is also a collector. You know, you were talking about the sense.
Yeah.
When you go to a studio, I mean, there's many examples of this, but when you go to a studio, there's the studio space, and then there's also an area that's a sort of living area where
Yeah.
there's like couches and a bed and a kitchen, and you know, you can
Through a kind of unmarked small door in the wall, you go from a cavernous large warehouse space of a studio into this apartment, essentially.
Yeah, and it's an apartment that's hyper curated and very kind of carefully built out of objects and collections. So,
Yes.
for instance, like against one sort of like, I guess it's a wall, or it's like maybe a pole or something. There are like dozens of tennis rackets,
Yeah.
all arranged like as if it's like a museum, you know, as if
Because
it's like
actually
an
it is.
Because
His entire life is an
and
installation.
It is and it isn't, or like the sense, like if you go to the bathroom, there are like, I don't know how many, like bottles of
Many.
perfume and
Dozens.
cologne, dozens.
Which are beautiful together.
And
They
they're
have a real
beautiful.
sculptural presence.
Yeah, because it's all like sort of like stuff from the 80s and like weird, I don't even know to say what the...
By the way, this exhibition has a scent. It's a Guerlain scent from the 80s.
Does it really?
It does. It's important to note that this exhibition, that the carpet is part of it, which he specifically noted as Bank of America circa 1981. And the walls are also painted. They could be white, but they're not. They're actually painted. And you know, everything about the room is calibrated, and it's true of his living space too.
Yeah. And so then, but then also there is an actual art installation. So that's the apartment, which is, it is kind of an installation. But then there's an actual space that's given over to a constant installation. There's like a space with like a yellow carpet, and then just an arrangement and assemblage of like many things. It's like records, scents, books, magazines, some like ready-made sculptures that he's made, some found images and some paintings, all assembled. And what you said, the quote that you said, like, it's not interesting to go into my own head, the separation between what's in his own head and what's outside his head is actually very murky.
Yes.
You know? I mean, I think the idea is, so it's not this romantic idea of like, what is within me is the pure, unadulterated, like has nothing to do with the outside. It's like me. It's just me. You
It's
know,
actually
this
the inverse in some way.
this sort of utter subjectivity.
Yeah.
It's more like all of these things outside that I love and that have created me, you know, whether it's this song that I liked when I was 15, or whether it's this like guitar that I had when I was 27, or this like tube of paint, or this scent, or you know, this magazine. Those things have all they're from the outside, but they've all become me. They've created me as this kind of assemblage of like elements.
Which goes to kind of a profound philosophical question, which is, what is the self? Is it
Right.
the thing that it comes from within, or is it a thing that's constructed as a patchwork of all our experiences of other things?
Yeah.
And in a funny way, his whole project as an artist problematizes that, because it seems to be so romantic. It
Yeah.
seems so rooted
Yeah.
in romanticism, and yet it's really about, where is this person in all of this?
Yeah.
Even the words. You know,
Even the words, because like, what is more subjective or kind of like psychologically acute than some of these sentences that you see kind of written in his own handwriting, just like
I
floating.
hope future me is happy.
I hope future me is happy.
There's a lot of writing in these paintings, and there's two kinds. There's the writing that's under the painting and the writing that's on it. And when Freddie paints, he prepares his surfaces first and often builds them up almost kind of sculpturally. And there's lots of sort of incised writing that's hard to see unless you go right up to the painting. Not all of them have it. Some of them have a lot, where there'd be sort of shapes and hearts and little bits of song lyrics. Freddie's phone number is in one of the paintings. They come from his unconscious. He's just sort of a receiver for these things. He doesn't know where they come from. They're just things that come to mind, as phrases do in all of our minds.
Right.
And then he paints the painting on top of that. So he doesn't quite know how those surfaces are going to interact. And then finally, what completes the painting is that one little phrase that each of them has. Here it's, I hope future me is happy. In other works, it says things like, I owe you a feeling, or have love, will travel, in the case of that one over there. 1-800-SERENITY NOW is there.
So these sentences are simultaneously, like they're one and the same, like both completely kind of deep and come from the recesses of his consciousness, but on another level, complete cliches, right? Like these things like that are like, you know, like I owe you a feeling. When I saw that one, remember in The Simpsons where like Kirk Van Houten, like Milhouse's dad, like releases a single called Can I Borrow a Feeling? Because he's kind of like this idiot, you know, who's trying to be kind of a singer-songwriter.
That's Freddie. No,
well, I think self-consciously so,
yes,
you know?
absolutely.
And, you know, the sort of like middle-aged, like, I want to say something, but
it's always that tension between the ironic and the deadly serious.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of my favorites, this painting, which I don't know if everyone can see. It's a highway. It sort of looks rainy. Maybe this painting has a lot of weather going on. And then there's a sort of a sign on the side of the road that it says, someone's therapist knows all about you. Which is
true.
And also deeply true.
I know, and scary when you think about it.
Right.
Because, that's just the human condition. So many people know everything about you and you have no idea, nor do you want to think about it. Or maybe you do want to think about it. But just the idea that with this particular sentence says to me is that each of us has his own world that in some ways is connected to others. You know, I might tell my therapist about this talk or whatever, but it's my world. It's my world, and you're not gonna know about it.
Yeah.
Like we're like little vessels, you know, sort of separate vessels, just walking around.
Yeah.
And this is like Freddie's vessel. But that vessel is also, as we said, no man is an island. Like so much comes from the outside, and especially from popular culture, I think.
Yeah.
For him.
For him, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, popular culture and also unpopular culture. You know, it's that funny mix of those two things where everything is leveled. And, you know, it is kitsch, but the kitsch is dealt with with such seriousness and sincerity that it becomes high art. And the distinctions are playing with each other in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you realize is that these paintings served a very vital function for the artist. For us, they're paintings in the gallery to go see. For the artist, they're things he needed to do for himself in order to figure out what he was feeling. You know, we all do lots of things to figure out what we're feeling.
Yeah.
It's not always obvious. Sometimes you need to make a picture.
Yeah. And I think for him also it's a sign of like health in a way. Like we were talking with him the other day and he was like, basically was like in Berlin out, like not knowing exactly where he was setting up a studio in Berlin. And then he was like, but finally this week I like picked up a brush again, like after like a month or two.
Yeah.
And like, so I feel like I'm starting to get back to myself. So that relationship with work, which I feel like I can really identify with, it's like as much as like it's hard to excavate these things, it's harder not to.
I should say that this exhibition is hung in a funny way.
Yes. So why don't, Oliver, can you, because we talked about this a little bit before this started.
Yeah.
You had some quibbles at first with the way Freddie wanted to
I
hang
did,
this.
because when he showed me the model of this exhibition, I thought he was out of his mind. Because as a person who really loves to walk right up to a painting and look at the details, and knowing that these paintings have a lot going on the surface, I was very frustrated by the fact that like I couldn't see the surface well enough. You know, it bothered me. Mm-hmm. But then I realized that that frustration I was feeling was part of what he wanted. You know, there's something about longing that you can only sustain it if you don't get the thing you want.
Yeah.
And so that kind of was important. And for him, the installation of the works here was part of the storytelling. You know, this was a kind of an arrival and a departure.
Mm-hmm. And you can see it with a literal plane.
I mean,
right?
in a very literal way. And in a funny way, I feel like in our lives, in contemporary world, we're always going somewhere or leaving somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, we're like never actually anywhere.
Well, I think so. I think even if you're not a traveler, you know, obviously someone who's like a successful artist like Freddie or whatever, you know, he goes various places for his work and for leisure and so on. But I think even if you never go anywhere, the fact that we have our phones, I mean, again, this is kind of like a cliche at this point, but I think it really is true that we see all of these images that constantly create a sense of longing in us. Mm-hmm. So even if we're just sitting on our ass, like I'll never leave Brooklyn or I'll never leave wherever, you know, one never leaves LA or wherever they are, the sense of like distance, and the distance is both potentially geographic, but also like that thing you can't have, you know, that yearning for something that probably no one can have, that probably even the person experiencing it is not really having, is not really experiencing, is so strong. And I think it used to be, you know, me and Freddie are about the same age, thinking about LA or thinking about America even prior to like going west in America. That sense of longing that we got from music, from movies, from television, kind of like America as the reigning culture in the 80s and 90s, and wanting to go there has now become this thing that we all carry with us in our phones, and it doesn't matter if you're literally there, because that desire keeps getting created. Yeah. And there's like you'll never touch it. You'll never like put your arms around it.
Whereas you can't deny that these objects around us have been touched. They're so redolent of that touch.
Yeah.
You know, they were literally scrawled onto by someone's hand.
Yeah.
And you can't, when you see them in reproduction, you see them in a photo or on Instagram, you often can't discern that at all. So what you know about them is very little, in fact, as objects. Yeah. As paintings, they're something totally different than the image that's been used. Mm-hmm. But it's almost, I feel like they insist on their analogness. Mm-hmm. They're kind of, referential back to a moment before we were all walking around with these things in our hands that changed everything. Yeah. And I think that there's also a kind of melancholy and a kind of nostalgia for that in these works.
It's really, there's something very sad about it, or not sad, maybe melancholic is maybe a better term, because it's like a sweet sadness, because you look at these paintings and you recognize that feeling of desire, and you also recognize the feeling of like not getting, like it's basically you recognize how this desire, at the same moment that you recognize the desire, you recognize that it won't be satisfied.
Yeah. And
there's something about that that's like disturbing, and like, it's like scratching like a scab or something. Yeah.
There's a painting of Freddie's, it's not in the show, but the text on it says, "If you leave me, can I come too?" Yeah. And I think that really gets.
And the answer is no.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you can't come.
Yeah. but the sustaining of that
But you want to
fantasy,
come, but you're not going to be able to come, but you still ask it, even though you know the answer is no.
Yeah, and if you could in fact come, then you would no longer have the desire, the sustainment
because
of that.
it'll be just another thing, which is like, it just makes me think, God, is there like a way out of, I mean, this is a huge question. This is not even about the show. This is a question about life. Like, how is it possible to kind of break that constant longing? I don't, I mean, clearly I don't have an answer. I don't know.
I don't think the artist does either.
No.
But I think that is the animating question of...
Yeah, no, I think the work is about that.
Yeah.
I think the work is about that. And I think the work is also about being a person who, and, you know, and I've talked to him a little bit about this, like the person who seemingly has built a life that was kind of my impression of him before I knew him, kind of just that suspicion I had, or whatever you want to call it, or intimidation, where I was like, oh, he plays, he's a successful, wealthy artist. He plays tennis every day. He drives a Ferrari, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm just like, it's all great. It's all great. And it's like, I mean, of course, like, yeah, he has a nice life, and a lot of people have nice lives, but it's, that doesn't mean that the longing doesn't remain, you know, or that.
Well, a good kind of anecdote maybe to tie this all up and start to wrap things up is to, when Freddie like sold his first paintings in Cologne like 30 years ago, he went out and took the like, I don't know, $10,000 he got from the show and took, you know, 5,000 of it and bought an old Jaguar, and was driving around this old Jaguar in Cologne, and his art dealer saw him and was horrified, because this was not what an artist was supposed to do, you know, bohemian artist, like driving a Jaguar. Never mind that a Toyota would have cost 3 times as much,
right.
But it was, you know, this idea of a kind of love of an aesthetic,
yeah.
of an ars vivendi, if I can say that. What is a good life?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, Freddie's very involved in that on the one hand, and on the other hand, also very open about the kind of, to use your words, psychological unease that
and the kind of like
that.
artifice of it too.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't come from that. It's a dream, and a dream that he made real, and it's the same thing with these paintings, I think. But it's like there's something is a little wrong with it.
It's never quite real.
Yeah, it's never quite real.
Yeah. But in a way, I think that's also prophetic of so many things in life.
Absolutely. This is what everything is about. I mean, not everything, but this is what a lot is about in the life that we live, especially if we live like in current day America on the coasts, and you know, it infects everything, for better or worse. And
like Los Angeles, the real we imagine it to be ends up being very different than what it actually is, which is another set of dreams.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for us, about the artist, questions for Naomi, questions about life?
Questions for Oliver?
There's a question in the back.
Hello. Oh my goodness. I'm just curious if you know what kind of music does he listen to while he's doing his artwork?
I think there's a million things. I mean, I know something he told me recently that I wasn't aware of is that he co-wrote a song for Liam Gallagher pretty recently, right?
I don't know when it was.
Yeah. And so I know Oasis is big for him, Morrissey is big for him, but also like there's, in the book, if you look at it, so there's that installation in the studio that I was talking about, where there's just like a million objects, and they're all kind of cataloged, and there's pictures here of this installation, and alongside it there's a list of all of the elements that make up this installation, and a lot of it is music, and so.
Yeah, he's pretty open about the music he loves. It's part of the kind of inventory of his work that he puts out into the world, and he does have a public Spotify playlist.
So this is just the list of all of these things that are included in this installation, and it's both just like sculptures and whatever, but then just a ton also of.
I feel like lately he's been very into Italian music of the 1950s.
Yes.
60s too, maybe?
Lamp Chop, How I Quit Smoking, Merge Records, 1996. Let's see, it's not The Mountain Goats. Full Force, Galsberg, Emperor Jones, 1997, vinyl record. So this is just, there's a million different
It's
things
eclectic.
here. It's very eclectic.
Yeah.
But I do think it's very important to him. That's kind of like triggers for different moods and memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also that idea that a playlist could be such a personal thing, like an expression of some deep essence of who you are, and that an exhibition can be like a playlist.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I got stuck on that scent thing. And so, I mean, people collect perfume bottles.
But is he? No, I was talking about the scents, that I got stuck on the scents. And I know that people collect perfume bottles, but I guess
Somehow I got the sense.
that he was thinking something else other than bottles. Is it the bottles? Is it the scents? And then I was thinking like he has his room where all these scents are in there. Do they all like, mix together, or is it one scent at a time, or what's the deal?
I think, from my understanding, he spritzes a different scent in each of his studios.
And in each of his exhibitions over the years.
Different spaces.
Yeah. But you don't, this is, we have it at the front desk, so I can't remember the name of it, but you're welcome to stop by and check it out. But it's something from the 1980s to Guerlain scent. And he's got all the bottles together. I can't remember it being
They're not empty bottles.
They're not empty bottles,
They have some...
It's the way the bottles, it's the aesthetic shape and effect of the bottles as a collection, but it's also, what you were saying. It's the evocation, the emotional power of scent is very important. And I think, in general, it's like there's so much language in the show, but in a funny way, these paintings are also about like the failure of language. These words that try to capture these profound emotions in us, and they end up just being trite.
Yes.
It's like they can't really get to the core of what it means to feel something like love.
Yeah. And maybe one of them will hit you with a particular power, just like a specific scent, a specific smell would.
But you kind of don't know why.
And you don't know, it might be a memory, it might evoke something, maybe it's your scent, the scent your mother wore when you were a baby, whatever. But or maybe it's just something that you kind of reminds you of a certain decade or a certain like moment in time. Like 80s smells smell very 80s,
Yes.
For instance. 90s smell very 90s. Yeah.
And that was those were the formative decades of his life. So it is also about like, there's a certain moment when you're growing up that defines who you are in your sensibilities, especially your aesthetic sensibilities. So the scent takes us all back somehow.
Yeah,
along with
if
him.
I smell like CK1, I will just remember a whole slew of things. And I'm sure, and for
Which you may or may not want to remember. But.
Absolutely, and for my daughter, who's 14 now, it will mean nothing to her. Nothing. Yeah.
Are there specific images or sets of images? I'm loud, don't worry. Okay. That are the origin points for each of the works?
Yes, but generally he doesn't reveal what they are explicitly. Sometimes it's really obvious because they're lifted from a famous painting, like a Caspar David Friedrich painting, or from a famous album cover. Sometimes it's just images he finds floating on the internet. I think a lot of these images function like memes, like you don't quite know who created them. They've been around in a lot of different contexts. And the more detached they are from a specific origin in a funny way, I think the better, the more useful they are to him, because they have a kind of general belonging or a legibility to like an anonymous mass that allows him to then take them and make them deeply personal at the same time. So I think that, they're meant to be in a funny way very generic. And I don't think there's any rigorous parameters around where they come from. He kind of doesn't know where he's going to discover them. They almost discover him. A lot of when he talks about these paintings, he talks about them as though they have their own desires, their own consciousness, and he's kind of waiting for them to tell him what they want.
Thank you. So you guys touched on how intentional the whole setup of the space was, and I was really curious about the design of the birds coming in, and then also
Shoelace
specifically the bird on the right side of the wall that was painted in, and any context on that?
I can't remember what that bird is. I know
Yeah.
the giraffe comes from Richard Scarry, The Busy, Busy World of Richard Scarry, which was a book I liked a lot as a kid, or a series of books. I can't remember where that bird comes from. I mean, they all have an origin somewhere. I like the fact that the bird has migrated out of the painting. One thing that's different about these paintings from a lot of his previous work is that they actually have less of the cartoon element. Other than the giraffe in the clouds over there, there's not too many cartoon figures in these paintings. So they're just kind of like straight landscape, which is sort of unusual for him. And I think I wouldn't, far be it for me to interpret that, since this talk was titled Against Interpretation, but I think it is sort of like each of these characters, these Disney characters or creatures or cartoons that appear in the work, they kind of have their own lives, and they can kind of choose which painting they want to be in. I kind of get that sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is really kind of, when you think about the heaviness of the paint, and you know, the oiliness of it, and the kind of like the brush strokes, and then you think about the cartoon figures, whether it's like this, the giraffe, or like the drawing on the wall of the bird, or even, I mean, there is a little, one of those little apples or whatever, or peaches, like playing his sax on the Morrissey.
That's right, and they're the two
painting.
little figures on the motorcycle down there.
Yeah. Those are they're so thin, they're so like light, they're...
and certainly the shoelace birds are barely anything at all. They're literally shoelaces.
Yes. And so it's that difference between something that's like really just like an airy sketch versus that heaviness of European painting.
Which is kind of the dialectic that we've been talking about all along.
Yeah.
The light and the heavy, you know, the serious and the great, the levity in the work.
Yeah.
The kitsch and the high art.
Yes.
But I do think that it is about creating an environment, and it is about making us participate in the paintings in a way we might not otherwise, because suddenly the painting and the room are involved with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cartoons are kind of dancing, you know? It's a little bit of a dance, just like there is also a choreography to the hang. It's almost like these little characters are sort of dancing between the bigger pieces.
This is also an installation Freddie has done before. I think the first time was 15 years ago when he was, or maybe even 20 years ago, when he was first kind of leaving the shoelaces, and he was leaving Germany and moving to LA, and he had these trainers. I think they were Adidas trainers. I'm going to get this wrong, but they had the name of the particular brand was LA something. I'm sad I can't remember the exact thing, but
was it LA Gear?
Maybe, but it referenced
Remember LA
Los
Gear?
Angeles
Does anyone
in some
remember?
way.
Yes.
And those shoes were like the locus of all of his fixation on moving to LA.
Yeah.
So the idea of the birds emerging from the shoes was connected to
yes.
that. But now, instead of these trainers, he has sort of leather Oxfords, which for him are like he's becoming a European man again because he's moving back there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, these aren't things one knows unless you know the artist. But in a funny way, you do get the sense of like, what, you know, somebody's shoes on the ground with birds flying out of them. There's a lot involved in that, even if you know nothing about who made it.
Yes.
Yes.
So he's obviously, you know, very drawn to the culture of the 80s and 90s and his dreams of LA. Is he constantly collecting from? Do you see him collecting from all eras? Like, he just seems incredibly curious. Is it weekly he's got a new kind of fixation, or?
I think so. I mean, I don't know how kind of historically broad his collecting spirit kind of stretches over. But what do you remember, Oliver? He has that like rack in his studio of all the clothing that he got. That's like, what is it? It's like from some movie or something. Do you remember that?
No, actually.
He has, God, I wish I remembered. Just to show, he was, he has this full rack of clothes. He's not gonna wear them. I forget what movie they're from. It was like some costuming from some movie that he loves from the 80s.
He just wanted to have them.
He just wanted to have them.
Yeah.
It's not part of he's not making it into an actual real work. He's not gonna wear them. It's just like in the studio.
I get the sense
like a
though,
talisman
that,
or something.
Yeah, but like I get the sense that like that movie and the things he knows he loves are already very well established, and they have been for a long time. That within those categories and set out, obsessions, yes, he's always collecting and adding, but it's not like he collects everything. It's very selective. Yeah.
So you were saying about how he's moving from LA, going back to Germany.
Yeah.
I guess I was just wondering how being somewhere geographically different might change his work. Is he thinking about that? Yeah.
I guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. I don't know. It's actually a really interesting question, because so much of the work, as we've discussed, is about the sort of move west and about the kind of mythology of the new world and how it appears in images and in popular culture, and kind of leaving the old world behind and feeling a sense of like tearing away from that, but the sort of hope and longing that, and disappointment maybe, that coming to this other new world brings. So yeah, it's actually really, that's a great question. It's actually very curious to me to see what will happen.
Yeah, I don't know that there's an answer
Because
to that,
it's true that his work is deeply thematically connected to the move to America and to Los Angeles. And so what might happen in Germany, yeah, I don't know. I think it's actually really interesting to find out.
because that was also an escape from the heavy, weighty past of Germany.
But maybe America is becoming so heavy now.
It is.
In a different way.
There you go.
And so maybe, yeah, things are just culturally shifting to such an extent that America, as we've imagined it for so many years, is no longer the same.
It's not for nothing that in Los Angeles is the place where so many German Jewish intellectuals and philosophers in
Yeah.
the 1930s left, escaped to. And people like Adorno
Yeah.
then made famous theories about something called the culture
The culture industry, yeah.
from Los Angeles, these Germans who went there. And so in a funny way, Freddie's following a long tradition of Germans going to LA,
Yeah.
Either escaping something, whether it's, the Nazis
Yeah.
or the past of the Nazis,
Yes.
in the case of Freddie.
Yeah.
But then what does it mean now to be going back to Europe? And what does it mean for America to be undergoing all the things it is right now? I think, of course, we're not going to be able to answer that. But in a
What
funny
if we
way,
suddenly answer that? We're like, so this is what's happening.
I'm scared of what the answer would be. But, this is a show that's about being at a precipice and being in between and not quite knowing where you're going to land. And in that way, it's a very timely one, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Naomi, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Oliver, and thank you to
everyone.
all of you
Really
for
appreciate
coming.
you being here. And thanks, Freddie.
Thank you, Freddie.